What's up, y'all, and welcome into the Jack Vita Show. I'm your host, Jack Vita, for our first baseball episode of the baseball season since we finished our preview series just a couple of weeks ago. We have a fantastic guest joining us today, and we're going to talk a little bit about the first couple of weeks of the season. We're about 2.5 weeks into the season. Some interesting stuff from around the league. We're going to talk about that. If you guys like today's episode of the Jack Vita Show, make sure you subscribe wherever it is that you get your podcasts, and log on to my website, jackvita.com. Well, I don't want to waste any more time. We have a great guest, someone who I've been wanting to get on here for a while. We're
Yeah.
finally able to make it happen. And she absolutely loves baseball. That's the best place to start with her. She played softball at the Division I level at Cornell. She was a star. She's in their Cornell Athletics Hall of Fame. She now is doing stuff over at the Marquee Network, covering the Cubs as a host, an analyst, and a sideline reporter. She also fulfills the same roles at Big Ten Network. And of course, she's a fellow Trevian.
There
We
we
went to the
go.
same
Go
high school.
Trevs.
Elise Menaker, welcome to the show.
Hey,
Great to have you
Jack.
here.
Great to see you. Glad we could finally make this work. You nailed all of it. That I love baseball, all the background stuff. Yep, New Trier alum. You got it. This is how we connected at first. We brought the Trier thing. I was like, no way. Your sister, she played softball there. So yeah, all fun, small world stuff.
Yeah, my sister was a 3-year varsity player, but you were 4, right?
I was 4, but believe it or not, my freshman year, I played at every level. So we had freshman, sophomore, JV, varsity. So I started on freshman. I went to sophomore.
Oh, interesting.
JV, finish up on varsity. Yeah. So I did make varsity as a freshman, but it was kind of a unique situation with how it went. But it was actually really fun. I got to know all the coaches that way. A lot of the players, obviously, like at the high school, like at New Trier. So made a lot of friends. And it was fun too, because at that point you're playing for the sectional and all of that stuff. So that was my first experience kind of trying to do all of that at the high school level.
And for those who don't know New Trier, who are listening on the wavelengths across the nation to the Jack Vita Show, New Trier Township High School, the high school we attended, is a very prestigious school in the Chicagoland area. Actually, when you were at New Trier was ranked the number 12 or number 13 best sports high school in Sports Illustrated. You probably remember that.
Yeah, it's always very well known, New Trier, for not just being high athletically, but high academically and challenging its students in every capacity, really. And I always think of New Trier as just very large. So if you're wondering, it's probably even more now, but when we kind of went through, it was always around that 4,000 mark. So every class was around 1,000. And that's kind of what made it really competitive, is you had so many students who always strive to be the best. I mean, isn't that how you would describe it? That's kind of where I think my competitive nature came from. Yes, playing sports growing up, but New Trier kind of always pushed you to the limits to try to, it was, you're always, I remember I took AP classes my senior year, and you try to do well in those, and you're playing sports and you're trying to do it all there. And that was very common there, which I actually don't know how common it is at other high schools, but at New Trier, at least, perhaps it's common at a lot of high schools like that, but that's just all we knew for New Trier.
Well, and also, Elise, Mean Girls came out when you were in high school too.
Yeah. We always say that it was based off of, they say Evanston, they say New Trier. I think there's probably a little bit of both in there. You hear about, like, they mentioned Old Orchard, which now it's West Mall, but at the time, Old Orchard, the Pancake House, the original Pancake House you mentioned there. I think we don't do prom kings and queens and all that New Trier. People are always very surprised to hear that, but we do have prom. And in the movie, the prom king and queen, didn't they get gift cards, they said, to like the original Pancake House or something?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's a lot of fun things they threw in there, but yeah, that's kind of the not as positive light, if you say that about our school, that because it's kind of a lot in that movie that would suggest it's very cliquey and stuff, but there are a lot of people, and I always say, because there's a lot of people, you could always find your group of friends, and I definitely think that was the case there.
Yeah, I actually really enjoyed New Trier. I mentioned to you before we came on here, I went to a small private Christian school, Christian Age Academy, before I got to New Trier, and I feel like I got a very full experience because I know what it's like to be at a small Christian school with only 40 kids in your class, and then New Trier, where there are 4,000 kids at the whole school. And what I really appreciated about New Trier was actually some of that clickiness of you could escape people you wanted to escape. If there were people that gave you a hard time, there's a big school, you could avoid those people. And if there were so many options of groups of people that you could hang out with. And I know some people, maybe their experience is a little different. They have a harder time finding that group. But once you find that group, I think you can have a really fun time.
Yeah, always growing up, especially high school, it's that really fragile age for a lot of people. And so I think definitely, no matter where you go to school, high school can vary for everyone. But I definitely think what you're saying could be the case for a lot of the students. I enjoyed New Trier. I love, everyone's different. I love being around people and I love meeting people. So for that reason, New Trier kind of allows you to do that in a lot of different situations. So that's what I always appreciate about it. It gives you a lot of opportunities to do a lot of different things. So I was part of the radio station at New Trier, WNTH. My sister got me into it because she was program director. So she's my older sister. So I'd kind of, follow in her footsteps. And this is one area I did that. So I had a show with my friends, like on the weekends or something. It was just something I was doing for fun. So New Trier kind of encouraged you to try to, try a lot of different things there. And because they had so many different outlets like that, which now maybe it's more common to have like radio stations. At the time, having things like that wasn't as common. So it was kind of cool to do that. But yeah, so I've enjoyed it. It's, our own little bubble there, if you will, that kind of embrace. And I always say too, that because it is so challenging, because I found it difficult because when you are trying so many different things, you don't have a lot of time to do a lot. So then when I went to college, I actually found that it was an easier transition for me because of how much you're pushed at that level at New Trier. So that was another positive that I took away from the experience. You heard that going through it, that you in the moment, you sometimes weren't even realizing how they were preparing you for what's ahead. And then when you went to college, you're like, oh, I see it now.
Yeah, both colleges that I attended were smaller than New Trier.
That's also can happen. Exactly.
Yeah, I think New Trier prepared me pretty well for college.
Yeah. So, and sometimes that's a nice thing too, right? You got the experience like a big high school and then a little bit of both, but maybe sometimes because a lot of people go to colleges that are bigger than their high school, but you kind of got both. And I know people like smaller colleges too for that reason, because it's more intimate. You can get to know people. It's not as, massive as universities can be.
Now, Elise, was the Wilmette Beacon around? Were you
It was the Wilmette Life.
Okay, Wilmette Life.
Yes.
I did an internship with all those papers, Wilmette Beacon.
Cool.
And
the Beacon was around too. So were they separate? Is that okay? In my head, maybe. So yeah, because the Beacon sounds very familiar. So I think that's around. Yeah.
I did that 10 questions section where you ask the athlete of the week the 10 questions. So I'm going to give you my favorite question.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Favorite North Shore local food spot?
Oh, wow. It has to be, I was going to say Irving's, but I'm thinking in my head of Homer's. So maybe I'm thinking, I go get the hot dog. These fries at Irving's are unreal. And I'm not even like a huge cheese fries person, but it's just like this different cheese they use. Yeah. And Homer's obviously for their homemade ice cream. So can't go wrong there. At Homer's, I used to get their chicken fingers. Those are really good with their mustard sauce. I'm getting way too detailed, but these are the childhood memories I have. You asked, so
you got it.
Those would be. I guess I gave you two, but one for dinner and dessert.
I love the cheese fries at Irving's. Those are so good.
Good, right?
Yeah.
We really don't get them anywhere else, but I was like, what? These are amazing. My brother loved them too. He got me on them.
Awesome. So, Elise, you go over to Cornell and you had a great career over there. And I'm curious, because you also had mentioned when we were emailing, getting this set up over the last several months, I was saying we could talk some college basketball, we could talk college football, and you're like, baseball.
I love baseball.
It's got to be baseball. Baseball is your love. What ignited your love for baseball? And I'm also curious, did you ever play baseball with the boys growing up before you played
So
softball?
it's funny that I did not, but I know why you asked, probably because since when you're so passionate about it, it must be there somewhere. But it was really with the boys I played with my dad and my brother. So I never played, I always played softball. So I never played baseball with the boys, but probably it's ingrained in me because my dad played baseball growing up and professionally played single A for the Orioles. He played in college, like all of that stuff. And so we kind of, when I say we, I think of my brother and I. My sister was into sports, just not as much as my brother and I. So typically it was the three of us kind of going out playing catch. My dad, growing up teaching us how to throw a curve. I would go take batting practice with my brother and dad, and that's actually where I would hit baseballs. So I think one time in an interview, someone asked me, and I thought it was softballs. My brother was like, "Dad threw you baseballs." I was like, "You're right." I don't know why I said so. He did throw baseballs, and I didn't mind. I always thought too. Baseball is smaller. So as I was training my hand-eye coordination, I think there was ever any harm in hitting a baseball in that sense. So, and it was also for fun. I've never really been someone who's taken the sport too seriously. It's hard enough that I've always tried to approach it and have fun with it. And that's kind of where the love comes from, because then as I, continue to play like at New Trier and then at Cornell, and I played a professional season overseas in Sweden, really what kept me going back, because at New Trier, I also played tennis, and we won a state championship my junior year. I was top 16 in doubles my senior year. And it was a big part of my life growing up, tennis. I started playing tennis before I started playing softball. But what kept me going back to softball were the people. I loved my friends in softball. I had more fun. Tennis can be really high stress because I played singles, and I mentioned I did play doubles, but most of the time I was playing singles. And look, it's hard. And I actually attribute a lot of my success to softball for what I experienced on the tennis court, because the mental side of tennis was so much more challenging to me, that when I was in clutch situations or critical situations in softball, I felt I was able to manage them because they didn't seem as high stress or as hard as it was on the tennis court when you're kind of alone. So that's why I always told myself, and I even tell young athletes this today, that the minute you stop having fun with a sport, then maybe it's just time, to find something else, or to just figure something else out. Because to me, that's number one about sports: have fun with it, because that's always when you're going to have success, and that'll kind of drive you. So that's just kind of where the passion comes from growing up playing, it being in my family. There's just something about the sport that I love. I love the leisurely aspect to it. I love that it takes time. I love the pace of it. When you want to talk, yes, I believe that baseball games can be quicker, and they would be equally effective, but it's that history to it even that comes with that. So there's just something about the game. I don't know. It's just kind of in me. And maybe it goes even back, like I was saying, to childhood, but that's kind of where it comes from. It's always been a part of who I am. I thought I could let it go at one point when I was looking at jobs. You start looking that direction as you go through college. That's at least when I figured out what I wanted to do. And I went right back to sports. I was trying other things, and I went right back to what I loved.
Well, the reason I asked the question is I'm sure your brother played at
Yes.
Romer Park
Yeah.
in the Willet
Oh
House
my gosh, I
League.
was
Yeah.
walking there. Yeah, in the back parking lot you pull into, like you wouldn't even know a baseball field is back there. Yes.
Yeah. And there's always like maybe once a year someone gets their windshield shattered by a
Yeah.
home
You
run.
gotta park wisely at the parks. Yes. Actually loves yogurt. That's another good local spot, because that's near Romer Park.
Oh, yeah. I
Like
actually
that.
don't think I've been there, but I've seen it.
Oh, yeah. That's it. I don't know if it's there anymore, but there's like one or two other locations somewhere out in the suburbs. But that was another good Menaker spot right there.
Well, there's always like a couple of girls in the house league. And so I was wondering if you were one of
Of
those
course,
girls.
yeah. I love
Yeah.
seeing girls play baseball. Whatever way girls can get involved in baseball or softball, it just makes me happy, because they are very similar. It's fun to see girls playing with the boys at a young age, but I also think softball can be really fun too. So as long as I just love seeing people involved in it, that's just what makes me happy. So yeah, and I've gone back some summers, a couple of them I coached at New Trier, so that was fun too. It was kind of nostalgic. I was like, I can't even believe I'm back at this field. Like nothing's changed. It was great. It was fun. Coach Cadwell at the time, like he was my coach. I went back and helped him in the summer. So yeah, there's just a lot of memories there at New Trier.
Well, you mentioned making baseball something that's even more girls can get involved in. And I think that's something that you're doing right now with your career. It's
Thank you.
very cool because for those who don't know, Elise does some sideline reporting. She also does analysis though. She's called some games last year. You called every single game of the Iowa Cubs that was on TV, right?
Right, exactly. So we
Color
started.
commentary.
So the games that we aired for the Iowa Cubs, they started, I think, around June. That aired on Marquee Sports Network. And I was partnered he calls them in Iowa, Alex Cohen. He calls every game there on the radio. So then we would hop on for TV together. He's fantastic. He was such a great partner to me. And I look forward to hopefully doing more with him this season. And just that he really made it a nice transition, made it really, when I say fun, he makes it really fun. Yeah. So he's around the team so much that he would help me a lot too. And I would have questions if I was following the team, but wanted to know something more specific. He always, would help me out there. So that's a really great opportunity. And it was fun because I got to first look at a lot of players who we saw later in the season up with the big league team. And that's equally, going on right now too. We'll see those guys like a Brennan Davis soon. So yeah, that was a lot of fun. I feel like I make fun a lot on this podcast.
So this is really a newer thing to see women in this lead broadcast role. And I know you called some games at spring training this year. You also made history on the second ever all women broadcast that was on YouTube last year with Melanie Newman and Alana Rizzo. And I feel like when I listen to you on those games, I'm always learning stuff. Like
thank you.
I know a lot about baseball, but you know a lot about the hitting mechanics. You're talking a lot about the mechanics. A lot of it's softball there with the hitting mechanics too, right?
Yeah, it's so funny because I can't hide it. I love hitting. I love talking hitting. I love learning about hitting. I love learning about baseball. And so that's just probably like the player in me too coming out. It's like that combination of reporter, analyst, player, just coming together in my job. But no doubt, like I loved hitting growing up. And then in college, I really felt like I fine-tuned that skill without really even knowing it. I think it's actually only been through my job that I've started to realize what I learned in college, and I've taken what I've learned. And that's what you're kind of hearing in broadcast combined with what I, get today from players and coaches, managers, whatever it may be. But I think going through college, I just kind of was trying to perform to the best of my ability and to push myself and to improve my game constantly. And at the time, I didn't really think anything of that, except that's just what you do as an athlete. And then kind of as I draw on my experiences now, and as I'm asked about things, or as I watch baseball and I see situations, I'm drawing on what I would do or what I did in those situations, whatever it may be. It's funny because after playing, I never really thought about it as much as I do now. I started my career as a news reporter. I always wanted to go into sports. I just couldn't find a job. So in order to start in the broadcast industry, I started out in local TV as a news reporter and eventually was able to get into sports. But that's why I think it's funny how I never really thought about it until I started to talk about it more and started to, talk baseball more and get the chance. And that's what makes me happy. So I appreciate that because my goal as an analyst is to inform and entertain. So it means a lot that if I can do that it means that I'm doing my job. So I appreciate that.
So I'm curious, did you ever think when you got that degree and you started out with news that you would get the opportunity to broadcast as a color commentator men's baseball games?
When I started in local TV, all I was thinking about was I have to get to sports. So that was my focus. It was not, I have to get to sports so I can be a baseball analyst. That was too far. Like I just at first needed to accomplish like the immediate goal. So everything I did, I knew that I was gaining valuable experience when I was a news reporter because I knew it would never be wasted experience. In fact, I do not believe I would be the sports reporter I am today without my news background. But with that said, news wasn't my passion. I hope at least that when I report or when I do my analysis that you can feel the passion. I hope to bring that at least to the games. And so that's why I always wanted to get into sports because I felt it was more me. if you will. And I thought by being myself, I would be establishing a career that would hopefully last me a long time. So the thought was not there. But as I transitioned into sports, that's when I started to kind of realize, here's what I like doing. I love covering baseball. I started covering sports when I worked in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. So I was covering the Brewers. I loved going to the ballpark. We were a heavy Packers station. Really enjoy covering football, but there was it's like my heart's in baseball. So when I go to Miller, or at the time Miller Park, that's when I was like, man, I could sit here all day and be totally fine with that. So that's kind of when I started to realize any opportunity that I could get to do baseball, that would be awesome.
Well, I think it's really cool. Last thing on your career here, unless you have anything else to add, and then we can get into some of the baseball news.
Baseball
But
chatter.
the thing I think is really cool is that I think what you getting on these broadcasts, Jess Mendoza, I was listening to her on the Dodgers the other night, and she's great. And there are a lot of other women who have gotten these opportunities. You did it with Alana and Melanie Newman. And I think what's great is I do think this makes the game more appealing to young girls. And I think there are a lot of girls who, if they didn't grow up with brothers, if their dad wasn't into baseball, they never quite understand it. They never have a reason to be interested in it. And I know some girls, the reason I mention this is because I have some friends who maybe they started dating a baseball player and they're like, oh, wow, this sport's amazing. This is so great. And so I think for people like you to excel in the positions that you're excelling in, I do think that there's potential to bring in more of a female audience that may not have been there before.
Thank you. Yeah, I hope that that can happen. If that can be a result of my work, that's like above and beyond, and something that when I do it, it's not even top of mind. But if that can be a result, that's fantastic. Because like I said, anytime I can get, I think sports are just so great in general. I think if kids can get a chance to play them or be around them or just be exposed to them, baseball is what I love, but whatever that may be for other people too, then that's awesome, because sports taught me just so much about life. So that's, I think too, that it's really important to me just to try to always do my best and to put in the work. I work really, really hard constantly at trying to improve and to learn the game, especially with how it can change, or the changes that we've seen over the game, even in the last, say, like 5 years or so, and just kind of staying on top of all that and learning the nuances of the game, because as similar as baseball and softball are, there are differences, like the pitching side of it, right? Like those are just obvious differences. And so that's great. And it means a lot. And I hope, whether it's like girls or young boys, I hope when they see, if it's me or anyone, if they can be interested in it, then that's amazing. Because I hope that over time, that I can either keep people or get people interested in baseball, because I hope that comes out with my passion. I love to kind of bring that to people.
100%. Now, Elise, let's talk some baseball. And we got maybe 8 minutes here, 7-8 minutes.
Sure.
All
yeah.
Right. Yeah. Let's talk some baseball here for a
Whatever
little bit.
We can fit in. You got it.
All right. So we'll do what we can. Let's start with, why not the Cubs? I mean, you were on hand for the whole series this past weekend.
Yeah.
Rain delay and all yesterday.
Oh, yeah.
21 runs on Saturday.
Right, that one too. Yep.
How was the weekend?
It was good. Like you said, a little chaotic at times with the rain delays and stuff, but we got in all the games, and that's what's always important. The Cubs are a good team with a lot of contact bats. So they're going to look different probably than what the team that you've been seeing over the last few years. And a lot of it has to do
and that's
with
a good
that.
thing.
Yeah. And some people, like, it's a good thing. It's different because you had a team a few years ago who won the World Series. I guess now it's more than a few. We're talking 2016, but it's changed. And so it's good in that you have more contact now in this lineup. There's been more swing and miss in the past. But I think too, so some would say with the contact, you can get more double play balls, some ground ball outs. So that can be a negative of it. But I think over time, and I agree with David Ross, who says that when you put pressure on the defense, you force them to make plays, good things can happen over time when you do that. So you definitely have the contact. All they were missing in some of those losses to the Pirates was that one more hit. They were in those games. It was just about coming through in those key moments when you had runners on base. And that stuff, can sort itself out over the course of 162. But I like the pieces that they have. It's fun to watch. You have people like first Seiya Suzuki is probably a name that a lot of not just Chicagoans are learning, but in baseball, like around the sport. And he's probably one of the more fun players, not the most fun player to watch on the team.
Yeah, of course, you guys, by the way, the viral video, you were talking to him and his interpreter, and the foul ball came
Oh, that
right
was
at you guys in the dugout.
insane. Absolutely insane. We were, I mean, so lucky. It was inches from us. Like if I had been a little bit to my left, it'd be a very different situation. So we just got very lucky. Yeah, it was kind of just, it happened. We were okay. So we just kept doing the interview because in the moment it was just, you're fine and the ball didn't hit you. And then after, you're like, wow, that was a lot. It was, glad we're okay. That was
Yeah.
I'm glad
Yeah.
all okay.
I think Seiya is going to win NL Rookie of the Month here in a few days. If that happens, then the Cubs are looking at back-to-back Rookie of the Month because Frank Schwindel finished off the year. So obviously some good building blocks there. And Seiya, I was hearing Dan O'Dowd talk about this on MLB Network on Friday.
Sure.
The emergence of Seiya Suzuki, if this guy's a five-tool player, if he continues what he's done here in the first month, and that really accelerates this rebuild process that the Cubs are in.
Yes, I think that when you look at the Cubs, he is right now the one of the players that is going to be here for at least 5 years. So you look at that piece and you really like that piece. And when you talk about, say, like Rookie of the Month or just what he's done, or when you hear like someone like a Dan O'Dowd here talk about him, get this. I was looking up his numbers before he got on because I just like to not just know for myself, but I knew we were going to talk about him. He has a 492 on base percentage. He gets on base a lot, but when you actually see it there in the numbers, you're like, what? That's crazy good. Like if I were going to say that's insane, that's a good thing. Like a 354 batting average, already has 4 home runs, OPS of over 1,000, over 1,100. So he's really been adjusting, I think, a lot quicker than people thought he would. There's not many at bats where he doesn't look like he's not in it. So on the positive side, he looks like he's always in every single at bat. And he is one of the strengths of his game at the plate. Great play discipline. So when this guy takes a ball, it's usually a ball. When he swings, it's usually a strike. There are pitches he has taken with 2 strikes that I don't know how he took, because I know I'd be swinging as a hitter. And then I think because he's doing so well at the plate, a lot of the times what can be lost is how good he is defensively. He is someone who looks like a natural out there in right field. And that was known coming in. But I think given he's playing at all these different fields, he's learning outfields, reading the balls, even in spring training with that Arizona sky. I don't think he had any misreads. I think he got everything. He's a vacuum out there. He'll block, he'll catch anything that goes out there. So good arm, quick. So that's another thing. I think we've seen already some plays by defenses where they've misplayed. They haven't misplayed the ball, but the throw, it's been more of an errant throw, because I think they look up after making fielding, say, the ground ball. They throw it away because they're realizing, say, it's pretty quick down the line. And as opponents get to know him, I think that's what they're learning is a big part of his game too. So that's what Dan O'Dowd's talking about with that 5-tool player. He really brings a lot to the game. And I'll give him a 6-tool personality. He's got a great personality, very funny, fits in really well with that locker room, the clubhouse. And that's probably one of the best things about him. He is just a very pleasant, nice, respectful person to be around.
That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, you mentioned his low chase rate. He has one of the lowest chase rates in all of baseball. And I think what people are going to say is they haven't figured him out yet. They're going to figure out some of his weak spots. But I'll tell you what, if he's not chasing, he's not going to have a significant drop off because he's showing that ability. Like you said, the plate discipline. I think Seiya is legit. I think this guy's a star.
Yeah, I do too. And I think to that point, and Kyle Hendricks has been asked about saying, like, what would that be like pitching against me? He goes, that guy's a headache when you have to pitch someone against someone like that, because of his plate discipline, but also, he can cover both sides of the plate. So to your point, it's not just that what he swings at, he can connect with, and what he's swinging at is usually in the zone, but he's got great like hand to ball, bat to ball skills, that he can go when he's swinging there. He's usually fouling it off or somehow like making contact, so he doesn't swing through a lot of pitches. So and part of that, like you're saying, is because he doesn't chase a lot of pitches, and that's just, I think, is with that plate discipline, there's going to be a lot of success there.
All right, Elise, let's take a look at some of the stuff that's going on around the league. Miguel Cabrera with his 3,000th hit in Colorado over the weekend. Just a great way to celebrate one of the best players of the new millennium. Of course, I remember watching him in 2003 when the Marlins were giving our Cubs a we won't talk about that.
We all know what happened then. But yeah, I mean, everyone's been watching Miggy, right? At this point, it was so fun to see him get that hit. There's fun again, but I do love it. But actually, I don't know if you saw it. I really liked, he was kind of giving a toast in the clubhouse to his team after the game. That was actually one of my favorite parts of the whole thing. I loved what he said. He was talking about just like thanking his team and saying this is such an honor. You could tell it meant a lot to him to do it in front of the Detroit fans. And that was why he said, I couldn't feel my legs. He was nervous because he wanted to do it at home. And he made sure to say that, hey, like, we have a good team, we can win, and let's go to the playoffs. Like, we can do, let's go to the postseason. So all around, you had all the build up to it, the intentional walk, everything. And he does it in very Miggy fashion and going the opposite way. Just a really smooth, easy swing from him. So I think it's great for the game. Obviously happy for him. It's not something you see a lot with what he's accomplished. And yeah, it's great for baseball to get that.
And meanwhile, another legend who's out there right now, Albert Pujols, in his final year with the St. Louis Cardinals. Now, I wrote a piece on my website, jackvita.com. You guys should check it out. I talk about how Albert Pujols, I make the argument, I think we should be celebrating this guy the way we did Derek Jeter 8 years ago. Derek Jeter got this grand farewell, and I like that we gave it to him. I think if you're an iconic player, it's a good way to celebrate and end a career, and it also draws in some. When Derek Jeter was on his retirement tour, one of my friends was out in Oakland, and he was going to go to the A's game the next day, but he had a free day in Oakland, and he said, this is the last time that Derek Jeter is going to play against the Oakland A's. And he jumped on the BART, went over to the game, and I don't think he would have done that if they were treating him the way that Pujols kind of right now. There's still time. Maybe Pujols will get the big send-off later, but that made this interest in people to want to go see Derek Jeter one last time, to send him off. And I think we should be doing that with Albert Pujols, who, by the way, has a batting average right around 290, 300, and 2 home runs already with the Cardinals this year.
Yeah, you wrote the piece on it, and I read that. And what I was thinking as I was reading it too, what I just appreciate, the minute that the Cardinals signed him again, that just kind of made me happy. That to me was almost like, oh, he'll get his farewell, he'll get the right send-off joining the Cardinals again. So for me, that's kind of, even with some teammates, former teammates of him, a couple of them that he played with. So yeah, I think that to me was like the nostalgia that it's that you always have as a Cubs fan. Cubs fans are like, oh no, not Pujols again. But there's some endearment to that, that there's this big rivalry, of course, always with the Cardinals, but just specifically with Pujols. And even when you look ahead at the Cubs schedule, looking at the times that, like you're saying, how your friend had that moment of, this is the last time that I'll get to see Jeter. These are the last times that you'll get to see Pujols in this Cubs-Cardinals rivalry. And so that, I think, at least from this end of it, as someone, that's kind of how, you grew up with Pujols and how you watched him. There's kind of that full circle, if you will, moment to it.
Elsewhere, the New York Mets are really, I would say they're probably the biggest I want to give them credit, I would say, because I am surprised. Typically, the Mets, we have this segment, we say it each year, will the Mets Met? And the Mets are not metting right now. They're redefining what it means to be a New York Met. They are tied with the Dodgers for the best record in the National League right now at 12-5. And really, they're building a nice little lead. The next closest team in the NL East is the Miami Marlins, and they're below 500. They have a 4-game lead. I think what I've noticed so far is this Mets team, what looks different about them to me is Buck Showalter and the team chemistry. The team chemistry just seems to be there. A lot of times they've done this where they picked up players from around the league, which they even did this offseason, but they bring in a guy like a Max Scherzer, who's an awesome clubhouse guy. They look like a team that wants to win for one another. And I can't believe I'm saying it. I know it's early, but I am buying into the Mets. I think they're legit.
Oh yeah, I think when you look at the pieces, I was reading things on the Athletic, and I think in their power rankings, they're two right behind the Dodgers, and those are two teams that have spent a lot of money to put a lot of good players on their rosters. And I think that I like how you brought the chemistry point, because I think that whenever I look at a championship team, I always, this is even when I do softball, whatever, I call it like the intangible or the X factor. And that's kind of the chemistry factor, because it's not always the most talented team that you play on that wins. It's usually a team that you hear guys say or girls say when they're on teams that, oh, we just got along, we just clicked. Excuse me. And so I think that that's a good observation. I think also it just helps when you have a lot of good players.
Yeah.
You have a good rotation, and you're missing, you could say, the best pitcher in that rotation, but a good lineup. You have the power bats, you can get the contact. And so, yeah, it's another, when you look at the Dodgers, you say really tough lineup. And I think you could say the same thing about the Mets, and they're playing like it too. So yeah, no doubt that they're starting off well. And I think this is a team that has, postseason goals for sure with the way they constructed this lineup.
Yeah, the other big surprise is the Colorado Rockies. They're 10-5. And yeah, they're pitching. If they're pitching, that's the question. If it can hold up, I think they're going to be in the mix too. But that's obviously a bit of an if, because their pitching has not held up over the last couple of years.
Sure, and it's tough always in Colorado, but I think that's kind of the part when you look at them early on. That's at least what sticks out to me. And when I was out at spring training, I was looking at their team and like the construction of it, and that's actually what stuck out to me. That's why I just immediately said they're pitching the rotation, because that's said, hey, and they pick up Chris Bryant, so you had him in the lineup, and you know that he's a steady piece there for a while. So they've got some good pieces.
And for those who missed it, the ugly scene from the weekend, Yankees and the Guardians at Yankee Stadium. Weird situation where Kwan gets injured, their outfielder, and fans were cheering. So then the other outfielders, Oscar Mercado and Miles Straw, went over and said something to the fans in left field. And it got ugly. There were some gestures made towards the players that were inappropriate. And then after the game ended, it seemed like that was over. Kwan has to exit the game. He ran into the wall trying to make a catch. And then after the game, the Yankees walk it off. Nice base hit from Gleyber Torres.
Yankees won the game.
They won the game. And right as the game ends, fans just start chucking beers at Mercado. Mm-hmm. Unacceptable behavior all around. I think there were about 20 or 30 that were just thrown onto the field. There was a scene, the John Boy breakdown. He did a really good job with that. Pointed out how there was a young girl who was being shielded from her dad.
Wow.
That is something it's something that we can't have at the ballpark. It's supposed to be fun. And I don't know what brings out this kind of thing in people, but you shouldn't throw anything at athletes. It kind of reminds me a little bit, Elise, of the social media culture where people want to take a jab at somebody. They'll say whatever they want to when they can hide behind a screen, and they're protected. They can throw whatever they want. They shouldn't be able to. But if they met that player on the street, I don't think they're going to try to start anything.
There's no place for it in any sport. You hate to see it in baseball. Very unfortunate, strange situation, kind of as you describe, because the Yankees won the game. You think it's over, and then there's kind of this, and then you even had Miles Straw like climb up the outfield the fencing almost, if you will, where he could kind of latch on. There was never any contact besides the beer cans that were thrown. There was never any contact in that sense. But it's not what you want to see, and it's not good for the game. And you hope that you mentioned like the that culture almost that you feel is kind of being created, and the hope would be that there's consequences for these actions, that they find these people and that they can't go back to games, and because it's just so unacceptable. You heard the Guardians comments like after the game, of course, how they felt. And I think, there's a line where if you want to, as they say, chirp, if you want to say whatever you want to say, there's that. But it's another thing to get physical with whatever that may be, beer cans, whatever you're throwing. That's totally crossing the line and uncalled for.
I finally found the topic that you didn't say something was fun.
Yeah, there we go. That is not fun. That is not a word that you will hear in that topic. That's for sure.
Well, Elise, hopefully you had fun here on the Jack Vita Show.
Did. Thanks, Jack, for having me. Thanks for your patience, too, as we sorted all this out and got it together, and here we are.
Here we are. So I want you to plug your social media handle or anything else that you're working on that you'd like people to check out before we go.
So it's pretty easy. I unintentional when I created it all, because who knew this was the social media world now that we live in. When I created it was my name. So you can find me on Instagram or Twitter, just Elise Menaker. And yeah, if you want, give me a follow. And other than that, that's all I got. Check me out on Big Ten Network, Marquee Sports Network. But yeah, doing baseball and softball.
All right, folks, that does it today for my conversation with Elise Menaker, the Marquee Network. Hope you guys enjoyed it. She was a real treat. You can tell the passion she has for baseball, and hopefully we'll have her on again sometime. I really enjoyed chatting with her. She had a short amount of time, but the time just flew by. We were having fun talking New Trier, talking some softball, some baseball, some Cubs. So hopefully you guys enjoy the episode, and you can follow her at Elise Menaker on Twitter. You can follow me at Jack Vita Show on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. Log on to my website, jackvita.com, and subscribe to the Jack Vita Show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, wherever it is that you get your podcasts. We're going to have some more great content coming out soon. There's a former MLB player, Michael Huff. He's currently doing some stuff with the White Sox. We'll be having him on soon. There's some other great guests that I'm excited to chat with. So again, make sure you guys are all subscribed. And until then, I'm Jack Vita. Bring in the dancing lobster.